Okay, just started recording.
Oh, okay. Everybody ready? Okay, good. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for making the time available again this evening. Hope everybody had a nice holiday season. Merry Christmas with a nice start of the new year. Just like to reiterate again, because of the virus, we are doing all our meetings on Zoom. And although it's awkward for comments, etc., I appreciate any that you're willing to offer. And I've received some, I've talked with some people, and I really appreciate it. So I get ready to start writing this week, the initial draft report. Again, tonight or anytime, please forward any thoughts or comments to me or to Matt, and I will attempt to make sure I get everything included in the draft report. At this time, is there any any comments for the committee prior to starting the presentations this evening? Okay, if there's no comments at this point, Sheriff, it's all yours.
Thanks, Bob. Well, the Undersheriff Brad Mazur and I will be covering all the topics tonight. I'll start out with the first one, which is violence prevention and reduction intervention. This will explain some of the areas in which we attempt to curb the violence in our communities. Violence prevention refers to the reduction in the frequency of new cases of violent victimization or perpetration through direct efforts to remove or reduce the underlying causes and risk factors, such as alcohol abuse, drug abuse, gang activity, illegal weapons possessions, and domestic violence conflicts, etc. The Sheriff's Office regularly engages in proactively with the community and especially with the youth in order to encourage civic behavior, respect for fellow citizens, diminish the risk factors for violence. However, violence prevention can only be achieved fully through by uniting police and other public safety professionals with professionalism, with professionals from healthcare, education, welfare, liquor licensing authority, and other sectors who can take the actions needed to remove or reduce the underlying causes and risk factors. Excuse me. So I've listed below several of the undertakings that we have been involved in to help reduce victimization and violence crimes. The first one is the YWCA Domestic Violence Program. We've been involved with this for well over 20 years, if not more. In fact, we were in partnership with the Village of Leroy and the City of Batavia years ago to develop a model policy for every law enforcement agency in Genesee County, so that the domestic violence situations that we had to investigate, that we all did it the same way, that you were getting the same service from whatever police agency that you happen to be dealing with. We also have a strong relationship with the Genesee County Mental Health and the Mental Health Association of Genesee County. In fact, at one point I did sit on the board of directors for the Mental Health Association. Again, we utilize their services when we identify individuals that have underlying mental health issues or in a mental health crisis, to again try to resolve issues before they get to the violent nature or affect or can influence a criminal action of some type. JACASA, Genesee County Alcohol and Substance Abuse, it's actually Genesee and Orleans. They now have their recovery station out on Route 33, the old Bones restaurant. We've been heavily involved with JACASA for a number of years. They assist us with individuals with substance abuse, whether it be not only on a street level, but also in our jail. As we all know, substance abuse, alcohol abuse are many times the underlying cause, that and mental health issues. with violent behavior and criminal activity. I sat on the board of JACASA for many years. So we have a strong relationship with JACASA, and they've always been there as a resource for us to utilize. And one of those most recent ones is listed down below, which is PARI, the Police Assisted Addiction and Recovery Initiative, which was undertaken, I would say well over a year ago, maybe pushing 2, where we offer no questions asked. Individuals can come to the Sheriff's Office, the City of Batavia Police, the Leroy Police, or the Batavia City Fire Department when they're in crisis and they need some type of assistance in getting into a recovery setting. We've had like I said, we work closely with JACASA that we will make arrangements that night. We will stay with the individuals until JACASA comes on the scene and gets them placed that evening or that day so that they can get into inpatient treatment. We've talked in the past about our school resource officers. We have them in 6 school districts in the county. And like I've said in the past, we create strong bonds between our students and law enforcement along with the educational staff. I think that goes a long way in heading off any misbehavior by the students, violence of the students, and creates a great rapport with the police and our youth, which I think we're really going to reap the benefits on as we get down the road many years from now, when those individuals that were kindergarten students and now they're graduating from high school and throughout their whole academic career, they've had a police officer right there that they can rely on and associate with. We also have our crisis intervention team that we put together. It's a specialized training for officers on how to deal with individuals that are going through crisis situations, mental health crisis situations. Not only work with the individuals, but to work with their families on services that are available and try to guide them in the direction so that it isn't, so when they do go into crisis, they have a more, or I should say a better relationship to go to one of the service providers rather than dial 911 and have police involvement. Not saying that we are opposed to going that route, but I think the better solution is for to have the proper services available and that those individuals know where to go get those services. I just talked about PARI. The independent living continuum of care. We have 2 of our officers that are regularly attend their meetings, and that's to provide assistance to people with underlying conditions to live in our society independently. They deal with issues like code blue when the temperatures are below 32 degrees and the homeless are out there looking for a place to stay. And in any way we can assist individuals with underlying conditions to, again, make our society a more adaptable place for them to live. And down at the bottom, we mentioned CJAC again. I think we mentioned this a couple times, at least throughout our presentations. It's unique throughout New York State. Genesee County is recognized for this endeavor. It's the Criminal Justice Advisory Council, which is comprised of multiple agency departments involved with the criminal justice system that works towards promoting public good and safety by allocating resources to provide for an efficient criminal justice system and to meet the requirements of alternatives to incarceration. This was started back in, I believe it was the early 80s. It has grown throughout the years. It was initially established to address the overcrowding of the jail and alternatives to incarceration, and now it's expanded into victims assistance and so forth. Again, it's made up of service providers, law enforcement, criminal justice members, and again, it's something that is quite unique to Genesee County and something we should be proud of. Any questions on violence prevention, and reduction intervention?
Yes, Shelley?
So, Bill, when I look at the YWCA and domestic violence, I am often interested in the prevention of re-victimization of especially domestic violence folks, right? So
Mhm.
how are they, how are these situations treated that the victim doesn't feel like they're being victimized all over again by a process of questioning and responding and being treated overall? I guess that's my concern.
Let me go back to the policy that we have here at the sheriff's office, and it's had to be revised somewhat with the police reform. But we take the stance that proactively that we make the arrest on domestic violence incidents. Unfortunately, with the laws the way they are now, where we used to remove the abuser by taking them to a judge and so forth, now we have to issue appearance tickets. So it makes it a little more difficult. But we always work towards a good working relationship with the YWCA to provide the services that the victim needs and to, if necessary, place the victim into a safe home where she or he will not be subject to domestic violence in the future. And we also have resources to accompany those individuals through the legal process, through Genesee Justice and through the YWCA.
Thank you.
Other comments, please? One question for you, Sheriff. Would you just go into a little bit about gang violence in Genesee County, both historically and current status?
Historically, I'm going back probably 15 to 20 years ago, there wasn't a tremendous amount of gang violence in Genesee County. Not saying that there is today, but we have seen an influx, and Brad's out there, and Brad can probably speak to this also. We have seen an influx of gang activity and gang members from particularly the Rochester area that have been here in the city of Batavia more than out in the rural community. Brad, do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Yes, good evening, everyone. We do see individuals, as the sheriff mentioned, we do have individuals that come in from Rochester and Buffalo area, most notably for narcotics trafficking, but they do have gang ties to both cities. So we do encounter those individuals in the city of Batavia. We don't see them in a large scale like they do in the bigger cities, but we do have individuals here that, again, it's related to narcotics trafficking.
And so are you saying sort of a stabilized, or what is the actual activity level? You know, is it growing, just kind of stabilized where it is?
Yeah, I would say it is stabilized. You know, past couple of years, I don't think there's been an increase or a decrease. You know, the drug task force does an excellent job doing the best they can intercepting those individuals. But again, it seems like they are replaced, but not at a very high level.
Brad, would you agree that the gun activity has a close relationship with the gang activity?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And again, it's more prevalent in the city of Batavia, I would say, than out in the townships.
Now, when you say gun activity, I'm assuming you're talking about illegal guns or unlicensed or whatever?
Yeah, illegally possessed and you know, individuals being armed illegally.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Shelley?
So now that you bring up the gun activity more prevalent in the city than in the rural areas, from the sheriff's department's responsibility and interaction, would you say that that's 20% of the gun activity that happens in Genesee County? Or how prevalent is it in the rural areas, or is this in more likely in the backup and the model that we have the closest car to the incident in the city? Help me understand how that gun activity kind of dovetails into the city of police, the police in the city of Batavia and the county sheriffs, please.
Well, a good portion of our information regarding drug activity and illegal gun activity comes through our task force. And the reason I kind of handed off to Brad there, because he just came out of that task force a couple of years ago. But we do have those individuals that are traveling from either the city of Rochester or the Buffalo area and distributing drugs within our communities. And years ago, you know, where they come out and do their dealing of drugs, as it is nationwide, more and more now they're armed when they're conducting their transactions, and honestly, they're armed most of the time. I think he's, like I said, I can't put a percentage on it, but if they're in the city of Batavia, you got to realize that they got here somehow, and that's where it becomes our problem too, is that they're traveling throughout the county. So we're extremely cautious on car stops and so forth, where there's individuals we know that are known drug dealers, and or we have information that maybe that they are armed. And again, we work, you know, closely with the city of Batavia. That information is, I would say, a good portion is developed through informants and through individuals that are involved with drug activity, or even family members to that effect.
Other questions, thoughts? Okay, thank you. Let's move then to the next standard.
Okay, model policy and guidelines promulgated by the New York State Municipal Police Training Council, also referred to as MPTC. The state MPTC from time to time develops a model policy on one or another aspects of police operations, which it offers to police agencies for consideration for adoption. Other organizations also develop model policies. Not every model policy is suited to adopt by every agency. Many agencies develop their policies and procedures by studying model policies from many sources and by studying actual police policy being successfully used by other law enforcement agencies around the country. Our general orders, our policies are almost exclusively from MPTC or from other accredited New York State agencies. We may have to make minor tweaks to those, but there's not a lot to say on this except to say that we do adopt policies from MPTC, and like I say, other accredited New York State agencies. We've been accredited, Sheriff Mayhaw got us accredited first time back in 2000, and we just received our most recent accreditation. I believe it was early December. We actually got the plaque. We went through committee the beginning of December. So every policy that we have in place, all our standard operating procedures are all mimicked after MPTC or accredited agencies.
Okay, we've heard a lot about their policies that you've gone through. Is there questions concerning this and how they implement them, or?
I believe we, not to interrupt, I believe that when we first started going through this, I did send out an email with all of our policies. I'm hoping everybody got those. If not, I'm more than willing to share them with you again.
Right. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay, if nothing further, let's move to the next then, the standards promulgated.
Okay, this one, Brad's going to jump in and take care of.
So the New York State Law Enforcement Agency Accreditation Council establishes a set of standards which a law enforcement agency seeking accreditation must comply with. And really, these standards were designed by New York State law enforcement professionals, specifically for New York State law enforcement. Not all law enforcement accreditation is not mandatory for police agencies in New York State, and not every agency is able to obtain accreditation from the council. As I mentioned, these standards help police agencies evaluate and improve their overall performance. And these standards really are, you can consider them a detailed blueprint for professionalism that every law enforcement agency in the state can meet. The accreditation standards are divided into 3 categories. These standards cover administrative sections, which cover agency organization, fiscal management, personnel practices, evidence and property management, and records. The second is training standards, encompasses basic and in-service instruction, as well as the training that's required for supervisors and road patrol personnel, and also any other training that's required at specialized or technical assignments. And then the third is the operations standard. This deals with critical topics such as high-speed pursuits, roadblocks, patrol, and any other unusual occurrences. So these standards are very effective. It gives the agency the opportunity to implement these programs at standards, which has helped all agencies of any size to enhance their quality of service specifically and in cost-effective ways. And as the sheriff mentioned, we've been accredited since 2000, and we recently were reaccredited in December of 2020, and that'll be through December of 2025.
So that is the lead agency as far as accreditation that the county has, the sheriff's department has? This agency you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, that's through, that's actually, it's a New York State agency under the auspices of Governor Cuomo. So I believe that by meeting these standards, you know, we are recognized as being in compliance with most of the police reform requirements.
Do you know what percentage of the agencies in the state are accredited?
Percentage wise, I'm going to reach out to former Sheriff Mayha. You probably have a better recollection of that than I do.
If I could just add to that, yeah, I served on the New York State Law Enforcement Accreditation Council for 18 years. These are gubernatorial appointments. There's chiefs of police, sheriffs, superintendent of state police, mayors, NISAC reps, and I think there's about 18 to 20 members, and they are responsible for reviewing the standards, setting the standards for law enforcement to follow if you wish to become accredited. The last I knew, there's probably close to 600 law enforcement agencies in the county, and I think maybe 140 at the most have been accredited. It's a very labor-intensive process. You not only have to pass the accreditation given by people who are trained in crediting you, but also you have to prove every 3 to 5 years, whatever the limit is now, that you've met those standards, complied with those standards for that period of time. So it's very labor intensive, a lot of work, but it's worth it in the long run. So speaking from the other side of the fence now, being a county legislator, you know, if the sheriff is sued, these policies and procedures help defend the sheriff and his office in any type of lawsuit that they meet the standards with regards to use of force, you know, high-speed chases, all this stuff. There's a accepted policy in place which they follow.
Thank you. So basically what you just said was less than 25% of the, of the agencies are accredited in New York State. It's interesting.
That's correct. I think it is because it's a lot of work. It's very labor intensive. And a lot of these smaller agencies don't have personnel where they can assign to accreditation.
True. All
It's
right.
not only becoming compliant with the standards, but like the Sheriff Mayos said, you know, it's continuing that compliance and being able to show that you are on a consistent basis following those standards.
Okay. Other questions, comments on our accreditation for the county? Okay. There was some follow-up from our last meeting. Were you going to discuss this, Sheriff?
Yes.
Okay, please.
At the suggestion of one of the team members here, we came up with a citizen comment form that is going to be put out on our website. There'll be a link over on the left-hand side of the homepage where you can just click that on and come up with the form. And I think it's a great idea. I did say that I would have it out by this meeting. I retracted from that a little bit because I wanted to get the form out to all the participants and see if you have any comments on it, suggestions, things you like, don't like, or want added, or would think would be a good idea to add. So I'd like to just open that up to discussion if you've had time to look at it. I felt that after tonight, after getting input, that then we would go ahead and launch it.
Comments, please?
I do have a comment. Sheriff, is it possible to get the county to make it a fillable form and so that it could be completed and filed online rather than printed and mailed?
Yes, that is, we're going to try to have both options. If they want to print it and mail it, that's the first option. And I should say the first option would be to fill it in on a fillable form and then just kick it back to us. For those individuals that want the paper copy, we'll provide that.
Excellent, thank you.
Welcome.
Would you have this form in Spanish as well for those who have a preferred language in Spanish in our community?
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you. I'll do my best.
Other comments? Okay, thank you for that follow-up.
And what, like we discussed before, once we launch this, we're also going to launch or do another public announcement about our tip line that we do have that, again, we haven't really broadcast in a number of years, so we will get that information back out there once again.
Okay, thank you.
I also have on there recruitment. We have another test coming up for the summer hits for deputy sheriff. Our plan right now is to make sure that we make every effort to get that out, the notice out as quickly as possible. We're going to work with our human resources department to make sure that we try to get that out, especially in the minority communities. Another thing that has been developed is that I know Barb's out there and she's taken it upon herself and talking with me to get a hold of the Career Center, the Genesee County Career Center, to get their involvement for individuals that are interested in taking the deputy sheriff's test, on ways that they can prepare for the test, how to prepare resumes, how to be prepared for interviews and so forth. And then, of course, I just commented on the citizen comment form.
Other comments or questions on these? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff.
You're welcome.
Other comments or questions, feedback from what was presented tonight or any evening?
I do. This is Julie. I know that we had discussed about about the civil service exams, and things like that to try to get more diversity, in the sheriff's office. How can we go about contacting the state, Albany, the governor to change some of those regulations that you guys are being, I wouldn't say forced, but are being told you have to use those certain guidelines in order to hire. So what do we do to get more diversity and change that?
There's been a push throughout New York State for years now to reform the civil service requirements and the testing procedures. I guess my best answer to that is, we push on our state senator and assemblyman to try to change that or to put pressure on New York State to change their civil service regulations. I think I speak on behalf of most people involved in administrative position from civil service, that it's very restrictive on who you can select and the guidelines that you need to follow. The rule of three, where you have to select from the top 3 individuals, to me makes no sense in the world. I think there should be some special, not special, but it should be more of a test and an interview process rather than a guarantee that if you're in the top 3, or it's not a guarantee, but that we have to try to choose from the top 3, when many times, quite frankly, the individuals that you have to choose from are not satisfactory. However, it's very difficult to get them removed from the list. So it really holds up the hiring process, and you have a very difficult time sometimes getting your positions filled. But it all starts with the state. Like I said, I've heard from almost every conference I go to, how do we get civil service reform? And I think that's something that maybe our legislature could get behind, and with our state politicians
Absolutely.
or political people, that we can maybe join forces across the state. But it's definitely time for some type of civil service reform, let's call it.
Because I don't understand that. I mean, I would prefer more diversity, and I know that I've worked with strategic plans and work plans in trying to get more diversity in some governmental agencies, but our hands were tied because of the civil service examinations and the civil service rules that are brought down to the state, and those haven't changed since I've been, trying to when we were trying to make these strategic plans. And how are you guys supposed to change all of this when your hands are tied as well with the state? And I think people need to understand that your hands are tied.
Yeah, unfortunately they are. It gets very frustrating at times, and but I think a starting point for us is trying to go down the avenue of getting the word out there about our test coming up, and providing individuals the education or the tools to be able to be successful in taking the test. I think that's the start right there, because I think I've mentioned in the past, we have very few minorities to take our test, and very few that successfully complete or pass the test. So yeah, it's a barrier. I fully recognize that.
Sheriff, this is Greg Post speaking.
Hey, Greg.
Good evening. In listening to this, and I know that civil service hasn't had a total rehab since Teddy Roosevelt was president, but that being said, this is a perfect opportunity now, because there has always been, in my 45 years of public sector, one component, which is generally the employers or the management side, petitioning the governor in Albany and some of the more partisan politicians on the east and downstate component to amend civil service policies to address our reality. This opportunity that's presented us in the past year, I think for the first time in several decades, empowers this organization to ally with the constituents, and in a combined manner both of us, all parties involved should be working collaboratively. It shouldn't just be county officials and legislators. They've been asking for this for 100 years. This needs to be a partnership, in my opinion. This needs to be a partnership with the constituents who are most impacted and most benefited from this change. And the only way that we can do that is to, involve them and engage them. And I think we need to invite the press to be participatory in that. I think a lot of people may respond to a poll that's neutral and not part of the sheriff's or the county or the town or any official organization, but that we could also actively be a partner too. I think we come with a united group, similar to how you and your deputies have united and allied with a number of other groups in the past to get some real change. I mean, this county stands, above many of the other counties for being innovative. And I think this is an opportunity we can't afford to lose to get everybody on board to change the civil service, to really allow a more diverse choice. All of us as managers and all of us as employees understand that there needs to be drastic change, that this being in the top three has not served us as well as trusting our instincts and giving people a chance that otherwise wouldn't have one. So that's what I have to say.
I think a follow up to that, Greg, I think just thinking out loud here, I think that should be part of our report when that we recognize that there's problems with civil service and that incorporate it right into our report to the state.
And I think the louder and the more frequent and the larger the group. I mean, we're all here, and this is a pretty substantial size committee. Well, we got 60,000 people here. If we can get 5% of them to support some kind of petition to address this as a vital component of what they're asking us to do here, then I think maybe that has maybe a better chance of gaining some attention in Albany. We got to strike while the opportunity presents itself. It's 6 months when everything calms down and it goes back to business as usual. But this is still pretty hot, and we're on a tight schedule. I think we need to make this one of the key points. We're all willing to help and do what we can, but we're restricted. It's like asking us to solve a problem and not giving us a pencil.
Matt, how about from your association? I'm wondering if there's some backing we can get from them.
I can always raise it. I with anything this large with the state, and when it comes to the state's rules and civil service is right up there, along with anything to do with collective bargaining, with anything to do, with scaffolding, anything to do with any kind of rules that really disadvantage us, especially in upstate. The bureaucracy is significant, and it's challenging, and not to downplay the worth the fight at all, Greg. But at the same time, we can't lose sight of the fact that I think we could do better with our own recruitment and advertising efforts. I think that's something that we control in our own hands. That's something that we don't need outside help for. That's something that we can try to reach out to segments of our population and do a better job of education, a better job of notification, because we could change the rules all we want and increase it from 3 to 5 to 100. But if we don't get diversity in people taking the test, then it doesn't do us any good at all. So I think that we control some of that. We have to get better at getting people of diversity to actually take the test. And if we saw that the problem was we had a list of 50 people and we never got to people that we wanted at 45 and 40 or 30, then that would give us all the ammunition we want. But if we demonstrate that we don't have the diversity we want even on the lists, I think people could argue back to us quite easily, well, you don't even have the people on it. Show us the list that you can't reach to. So I think we have to, make sure that we are educating and reaching out and advertising to, a wider segment of the population. These tests, unfortunately, we find a lot of the same people taking the tests, and it's almost like a hidden secret in some ways. You know, people, the same test takers continually overtake tests, and they're on the same list. And the process that it, not necessarily the top 5 is that is a hard part, but the fact that a lot of people that are looking for a job now want a job right now. And the way civil service works is, I mean, it's kind of a unique situation where you have to have somebody that signs up for a test that's taken 3 months later, that the results come out 3 months later for an opportunity that might open up 6 months later. So a lot of times we have a test, that we have a list, and we go down the list, and somebody's like, oh yeah, I took that test like a year ago. You mean I'm still on something? So it's such an antiquated process in general that it's kind of like a secret in some ways that people even know. People have to be planning way ahead. You know, we go to colleges for recruitment efforts, and a lot of times you ask a college kid, sign up for this test that you might take up 3 months, and you might get a test back in 6 months, and maybe someone will call you in 12 months. It's a wonky, outdated system that needs revamping in general, not just for diversity. Diversity is just one aspect. It's a test that needs revamping for a whole host of reasons. But as far as on the diversity side, I think that I think we'll have more effectiveness and more impact if we examine ways to reach certain segments of the population. And I like the suggestion earlier of having the career center potentially assist us in this avenue, and maybe some community members that can reach out and help spread the word. And as far as diversity, you know, even in the city, if the sheriff in this regard were to reach out to groups like Just Kings that I know is looking to get on our CJAC committee and help have groups like that spread the word amongst some of their contacts, that might have a more immediate effect.
That's exactly what I'm talking. I think we're on parallel paths here. I think we both think the same thing. The whole system is corrupt, outmoded, and obsolete. I'm just looking for some partnership. If the same political leadership continues to go bang on the same political door, nothing's going to change. But if we can get the activists, the people who are truly committed to seeing change, as partners, and that's what we're all committed to, is being partners with the community instead of, you know, finding reasons why it can't be done, but looking for partnership to get it done. I support everything that you say, and I think you're on the right path there. I just wanted to add that never before have we had as much engagement and as much participation and as much momentum as we have now. So I want to thank you all for using that opportunity to the degree that you've explained, and I'm clear around that. And thank you.
And just one more thing I can touch on that is that as I recognize here at the county, in the need for us as a county to do a better job of recruitment overall. I mean, a lot of the issues that we face as a workforce sometimes is self-inflicted. If we're not getting the best and brightest to do the work for the people, then we're shooting ourselves in the foot. So, you know, the county took a measured but proactive approach in this last budget to fund a deputy HR director position that's been vastly needed over the years, along with filling another supportive position as well. That department, which is our civil service office, the fact that we're going to be right sizing and getting this department more help makes it so that our HR director is not going to be putting out fires all the time and only that, and not thinking ahead like she should be, and not finding ways to improve recruitment efforts. So having that help coming into that department will help in this effort directly right here.
Could I also ask Gary Mayhad to chime in regards to our New York State Association of Counties? He serves on the Public Safety Committee, and I know that there are also organizations that include our HR director for updating this test and the process. But Greg, I think that you are right on the money. Right now is the time with the leadership in Albany to grab a hold of this and update the entire process of civil service. And I would hope that there would be that opportunity as it comes through this committee's report, additionally back to the state. But Gary, if you would talk about that Public Safety Committee, please.
Not only that, Shelley, I agree with Greg. You know, civil service is an antiquated, huge bureaucracy in Albany. I don't think you've ever been down there and saw their building. I think it's 4 or 5 stories tall, and I don't know how many people they employ, but it's a very difficult nut to crack. And it's not only Genesee County dealing with these civil service issues, it's every municipality across the state of New York. Counties, towns, villages, whoever, we all have to abide by the civil service rules and regulations, which are antiquated. I sit on the Public Safety Committee for NISAC, which is New York State Association of Counties. And I know that mostly deals with, emergency management, law enforcement, fire, EMS, that type of thing. But we're all have the same type of problem when it comes to civil service. And I think the only way you're going to get the change or some attention is to get these big organizations behind you, like NISAC, Conference of Mayors, county managers, city managers, all these people who have these issues with civil service, and bring that to the attention of our legislature. And because you're going to have people come out against it who got these jobs down there, these bureaucratic jobs. You ever call down there, it's a nightmare. And I think we can certainly bring it up at NISAC and see if they're willing to, take a lead on this. But I don't think this committee can crack that nut. And I agree with Matt, we can certainly do a better job recruitment from minorities. I remember over the years, I think we've had 2 blacks and maybe we have a handful of females, but the diversity is not there. We don't have any Spanish-speaking deputies that I'm aware of. We have that population out there, but we don't have the people to address those issues.
Yeah, my experience has been that some of the best talent is smart enough to know how obfuscatious and difficult the civil service, and they don't even bother. I think there's a lot of apprehension and maybe some fear in a lot of the minority communities to even engage in the process because it's intimidating and let's face it, it's like Matt said, it's messed up. You advertise, you post a test and you might get a job in a year. These people, all of the people that I work with, these people that I work with every day, they're not always able to wait a year for an opening. And why would they take the time out of their day? They're making a living to take a test that, quite frankly, is little or no value. And I think the reason you don't see as much diversity in the test takers is because there is an apprehension that's deeply rooted, and there's just this, it's a lost cause. Why would I waste my time? And we have to try to turn that around and do a better job engaging. And I think that you guys are doing an amazing job with that through this process. And I just want to ask how I can better support you all in getting there.
And I think Bill will agree with me. You always don't get the best candidate off a civil service list. There has to be a better way of testing some of these people to get them, on the job, because just because you're a good test taker, it doesn't mean you're going to make a good cop.
And it doesn't end with the initial appointment either. When any promotions that are given within most police agencies, and including the sheriff's office, are all based upon civil service tests. Again, if you're a good test taker, and you're probably going to rise to the top, but that doesn't make you the best supervisor. It's broken and needs to be fixed.
Could I ask Laura, as a teacher, Laura, what is your experience with civil service and how a teacher has to, perform in order to have an appointment into a school system? Is it similar to what we're talking about?
No, I mean, so there are some civil service jobs in the school district, but teachers do not have to pass a civil service exam. We have to pass a content test, but once you've passed that test, it's simply a check item that you've passed it and that you can get your certification to be a teacher. I think the same rules apply and the same idea applies in the career that we're talking about, is that we certainly want the best people for the jobs, right? But, I definitely know that sometimes the best teachers who test the highest on the tests are horrible teachers. And you can weed that out in the interview process and but it sounds as if we're a little bit handcuffed to the civil service process in the law enforcement. And my husband as well, he's in corrections, and it's a similar process and a similar problem, and that doesn't seem to work for for families either. There's many reasons why people want to get off the list or forget that they're on the list, that don't want to transfer to a different job. So I think it comes back to, yes, the civil service process is broken, but really, if we're not getting the recruitment, if we're not getting the candidates to even take the test, the discussion of the civil service exam process itself is kind of a moot point, because we don't have the people that we really want to be taking the test in the first place.
It's always amazed me that the state police do not have to comply with civil service rules and regulations. Here, the governor's own police agency doesn't have to comply with civil service, whether it's recruitment or appointment or promotion, whatever. They have their own way of doing things.
Well, there you go. There's our way in.
There's something too. They don't have to go through this police reform either.
Oh, Laura, you had a question on the chat. Did you want to just?
No, I mean, I think that someone actually kind of referred to it was, and again, I don't have access to civil service lists, but my husband, in the process of hiring people for his particular department, often talks about the top 3 and the reachable, and are they reachable? And I guess my question was, if you expand that reachability from 3 to 5 or from 3 to 7, would that actually help? Like, are you in the hiring process seeing people at candidate number 5, 6, and 7 that you wish you could get, but because they're not high enough on the list, they aren't even reachable?
Many times it is accurate, yes. That your better candidates are just outside those that are reachable. Not all the time, but many times.
And Shelley, you would ask a question concerning, is there a model resolution out there someplace? Have you ever seen it, Matt? Or
And I have not seen a model resolution. That doesn't mean one can't be started, but I have not seen one.
and then somebody just came on and said the Career Center is researching right now, opening up civil service. A comment on that, please.
Yes, that's me, Barbie. They're researching it right now to open up to have training available for the civil service at the Career Center, and they'll get back with something very soon.
Okay, thank you. Other comments about past issues or?
I'm curious, in the atmosphere that we're living in right now, which is bringing light to this reform committee, I'm just curious how many law enforcement officials, let's even just say in Rochester or Buffalo, are stepping away from law enforcement strictly because they no longer want to be involved in the urban area law enforcement that might, I don't know what the process would be to get them. They would have to retake a civil service exam for us to be able to hire them, right? I'm just curious if we're going to see an influx in people taking that exam because they want to get into other areas where they don't want to be working in an urban area any longer.
Actually, I'll start out on that, but I think maybe Brad wants to chime in a little bit too, because he does the interviews and that. But we just hired somebody from Rochester PD that is fed up with that environment and is now moved in Genesee County. They do not have to take a test. We can do what they call a lateral transfer, as long as the criteria to take their test for Rochester is equal to or more than what our test requires.
Is there a requirement?
Yeah, and
to live in New York?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
They have to live in Genesee County. The deputy sheriff does.
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, I don't know what the inner workings is of the sheriff's department is. I'm a coach, and my policy is I'm not going to recruit a softball player to be on the track coach or the track team. So I don't know how you would tiptoe delicately around that, but there have to be avenues of communication to reach some people who may be in the same boat as this particular person that you just hired that might be interested in coming out our way and just adding some diversity to our law enforcement.
Yeah, this is Brad. We've had several inquiries from, an example was Rochester PD about a lateral transfer. Some of the hindrance is moving into Genesee County. We've had a lot of qualified applicants, but they do, for them to move into Genesee County would be a difficult situation for them and their family. But as the sheriff mentioned, after the last year or so, we've had a lot of inquiries.
Now that requirement for Genesee County residency, is that set by the county or is that set by the state or who's
State law.
oh, state law, the deputies have to?
You can petition for adjoining counties and so forth. But typically you have to show that your recruitment, the people that are taking your test, the number of people you're recruiting is very minimal. And we do have quite a few people that take our test in Genesee County. So I'm not saying it can't be done, but statute says you have to live in the county unless you have that statute that says you're exempt or you can use people from adjoining counties.
Thank you. Any other questions, please? Okay. All right, well, I will begin to write in the next couple of weeks some type of a draft report. And then everybody can tear that apart and we'll go from there. Our next meeting is scheduled 2 weeks from this evening. It is a national holiday, Martin Luther King Day. I don't know if you heard anything back, Matt, of whether or not that is an inconvenience to others or not. It's not, doesn't happen to be to me. You can change it if that's appropriate, if it is a problem.
I haven't heard anything, but I don't think I submitted a request to see if people wanted to change that.
Oh, okay.
So it's perfectly fine. It was when the schedule got put together, I was just looking at Mondays, and honestly, I wasn't looked at. I don't think it was even realized when the schedule was put out that was falling on a holiday. We can always go to Tuesday, but I'm not sure how many people have already kind of penciled this in. I can make Monday work and keep it, but I'm a consensus person. So,
any thoughts? Or should we just ride with Monday?
I guess I would take the position out of respect for the holiday. Maybe we should move it to Tuesday.
I do not have a problem without looking at my calendar. You wanted to do that? Let's just move. Is there anybody who would be a real problem on Tuesday, which would be Tuesday, the 19th?
I have no problem with that.
It gives him one more day to delay starting the draft report. Procrastination. Okay, so let's assume.
Bob, hold on. I see that Jerry Ader indicates that he can do the 18th, but not the 19th, and also John Keller.
Oh, I said the 18th was fine, but I can do the 19th. I think John said he couldn't do
All
the
right.
19th.
Oh. I'm sorry, I didn't see the chat jump up over there. So what's the?
So
Either day is fine with me.
Okay.
It's Jerry.
but we do have one. We do. John can't make the 19th, so that's one. I mean,
if it's just me, don't hang it up for one person though.
For anybody that's a Boston Red Sox fan, we do have to respect them.
It's subtle, isn't it?
Yeah. Did you say subtle? Okay, now let's go with the 19th. And as the sheriff has said, it does respect the holiday. And as long as, and I appreciate it, John, but you have plenty of chance to comment on the draft before we go too far on this. Okay, is there anything else this evening before we adjourn? Well, again, I appreciate everybody's time. And if you have further comments, get them to Matt, get them to me as I start to draft the report. Meantime, hey, have a great week, and we're talking 2 weeks. 2
Go
weeks
Bills.
from
You as
tomorrow.
well.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night now.